Welcome, everyone. My name is Gretchen Sweeney. We are going to wait just a couple minutes to get started. I know some folks are probably registering and making their way into this webinar. So hold tight and we will be with you in just a moment. Yes, we will attempt to put on closed captioning. Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. My name is Gretchen Sweeney. I manage this competition as well as other global and regional awards programs for the Urban Land Institute. We will be recording today's call. We're going to post the video and slides on our website at uli.org/Hines, as well as in the ULI Hines Student Competition group on LinkedIn. So if you have not yet joined that group, please do so. I want to share a quick overview of the agenda. Next slide, please. We are hoping to have Eric Tao join us to give you a quick welcome. Working on making sure he can access the panelist option. And then we're going to get a quick site overview from Lydia Tan and possibly Siobhan Hauser. And then Brooks Patrick from Esri will talk about the ArcGIS tools. You may have joined our December webinar. He's going to give you a little more information if you didn't have the chance to catch that one, as well as give you information about upcoming webinars on that topic. And then I'll go over some competition logistics and we'll have a Q&A. So that, I think we've got Eric available, and Eric, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and sorry if I was just trying to get situated here with the Zoom webinar. Good morning and welcome to the 20th annual ULI Hines Student Competition. My name is Eric Tao, and I'm the managing partner of L37 Partners and Avant Group Inc. We develop multifamily and mixed-use projects with a focus in high-density, transit-oriented centers in the San Francisco Bay Area. But more importantly and relevant to you here today is that I'm based out of this year's host city, which is Oakland, California. I serve as the chair of the board of ULI San Francisco, and we are very excited to host the competition this year. In fact, my very first development project was in Oakland, I'm embarrassed to admit, 20 years ago. I've been a member of ULI San Francisco for nearly as long, and being a member has helped me find resources throughout my career to assist in the growth of both me personally and our company, to find peers who have been sounding boards, to bounce ideas out of and to test my assumptions, and it really helped me grow both personally and professionally. ULI San Francisco has over 2,000 members, all engaged to further ULI's mission through over 60+ events annually and initiatives ranging from sustainability to diversity for people at all stages in their careers. In the interest of time, I'll highlight just a few of our flagship programs, including YLG, Next, Urban Plan, DEI, and Housing in the Bay. ULI SF has one of the biggest YLG programs for people under 35 in the country, with annual programming throughout this year and a robust mentoring group. In fact, this is my second year as a mentor. If you're over 35, there is an engaged cohort of mid-career professionals known as Next. They support one another with peer learning, leadership training, and networking. The San Francisco District Council supports the largest urban plan program nationwide, creating discourse and about the decisions impacting the built environment among students and public officials alike. During its first year, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, the DEI Committee, has introduced several initiatives. I'm also on this committee, and it includes that Diversity Membership Fund in a partnership with the Construction Industry Workforce Initiative, CWE, to encourage and nurture diversity within the ULI community and the Bay Area real estate landscape. And one of the ones that I'm most proud of for ULI San Francisco is one I helped participate at the beginning. The multi-year Housing in the Bay Initiative will be having its 5th summit in June, where experts in development, finance, sustainability, policy, and community engagement convene to explore new solutions to break through housing roadblocks, improve housing affordability, ensure more people have access to housing, the housing they need in the Bay Area. And this is something I hope you will be doing, bringing in multiple disciplines and creating an ecosystem of ideas to try to solve housing issues in neighborhoods. With that, I'll pass it over to Savlan and Lydia. Good luck in the competition. I look forward to seeing the results of your work.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me? Oh, this is hi. This is Savlan Hauser. I am the executive director of the Jack London Improvement District, which is an area just abutting the site to the south. Should I go ahead and give my participation with ULI?
Yes, please.
Oh, yes. So I've been involved in ULI for about 6 or 8 years now. Coming from architecture, it was really a way for me to understand the entire development picture. And I was a public sector fellow from 2017 to 2019. So it's been an incredible resource for me to have the sort of interdisciplinary view of urban development. Would Lydia like to introduce herself too?
Hi, sure, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Lydia Tan, and as Savlan started out as an architect, but shifted very quickly to real estate development, focused mostly on affordable housing and community redevelopment in urban areas. So like Eric, I've been around for a very long time. My career started in Oakland, and I'm really excited to see the competition focus on a part of downtown Oakland. That's really important. In terms of my ULI involvement, I am a co-leader of a local product council for the multifamily sector in the Bay Area, also part of a national product council as well, the Public Development and Infrastructure Council, and have, like Eric, have also been a mentor with YLG and have worked on a number of technical papers and public policy advising projects locally. So I've gotten a lot about ULI, and as Savlan said, it's very interdisciplinary, and it allows me to understand what's happening in a broader sense beyond simply my work. So thanks very much. Savlan, you want to give a overview of the site?
Sure, yeah, I'll jump right into the slides. And I'm also incredibly excited that this is happening right in Oakland, and also so close to my work at the waterfront neighborhood of Jack London. So an overview of Oakland. We're just across the bay from San Francisco, and that shapes a lot of our identity and also our sort of development trajectory. The city includes about 78 square miles. We're huge. A lot of water. We sometimes forget that we're a waterfront city, also because of the barriers of the freeway that you'll see in the next couple of slides. A population of 440,000 and incredibly culturally rich and diverse. Next slide. So downtown Oakland encompasses a handful of neighborhoods that are really distinct. Koreatown, Northgate, Uptown, Lakeside, Chinatown, and Jack London, which is the waterfront neighborhood on the other side of the freeway, the 880 freeway, from the site that you're going to be focusing on, that's within Old Oakland. Next slide. So here are the competition site and study area boundaries. The site is in red and the study area is in green. Here are some of those downtown neighborhoods I mentioned, and it's really hard to sort of overstate the degree to which those sites and the freeways have created a barrier, not just visually and physically, but also psychologically for the connection of these neighborhoods. It's really, I can say easily it's the #1 economic development barrier to Jack London, getting a better connection through those sites and those the freeways that have historically divided us. Next slide, and I think I'm handing it over to Lydia, or I can go ahead and describe these buildings. So these are public sector buildings, the former jail, the police administration building, the courthouse, the sheriff department, and these are regrettably just a negative impact on the neighborhood, they could be sources of vibrancy and amenities for the increasing residential population in the downtown, but they are a drag. So let's see, next slide. And we just have a different view of the same sites and just how critical they are to the connections between these neighborhoods. We're looking at the fourth block of the site, the westmost block of the site, Jefferson Square Park in this photo. I think I'll hand it over to Lydia for the.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I would just say this is one of the few areas in downtown Oakland that didn't basically get raised as a part of the kind of mid-60s, like 70s redevelopment processes. So there's some wonderful old historic buildings. There's some not so wonderful old buildings. And I think this is an incredible opportunity to really set the tone for this neighborhood, which already has a lot going for it. So I'm really excited about what could happen here. So the other thing, just you'll see in the brief when you get it, there's a lot of information, a lot of background about Oakland and its development over time. Like many inner cities, there was a lot of redlining that happened, and the demographics then obviously, particularly West Oakland, which is very adjacent to the site, it ended up being a place where predominantly Black population ended up. And, you know, and there's some real issues that the city is facing around that. So we encourage you to read the materials. And I think this will be, there's a question here that these materials I think will be referenced in the brief that you'll be getting. So you'll be able to find this information. It's good stuff though. Really interesting background and history. And I think with that, we're going to hand that off to the next speaker. Is that right?
That's right. Brooks is up next.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, hello to everyone. My name is Brooks Patrick. I lead the Smart Cities team at Esri and primarily focused on the urban development and planning technologies. So over the past months, I would say, we've been collaborating with the ULI team to bring some new data types and new tools that we've been developing at Esri to bear the competition itself. So today I'd like to give you a first look into the ArcGIS environment that's been set up for the competition. And also just keep in mind the tools and even the data sets we'll be covering are completely optional for you to use. Next slide. Okay, so first, what to expect. Later today, you'll receive an email that contains a username. And in addition to that username, there's a link to create a password. So make sure you check your junk folder if you don't see it come through today. Sometimes, you know, the automatic no reply emails sometimes go to the junk folder. If you don't see it, feel free to email me. What you can do is use that login that you create to go into arcgis.com, which then provides access to the data and the apps like Urban and Business Analyst. And I'll take you through the process today and show you a little bit about what that would look like. Next slide. Great, so we've collected lots of data for the competition site and the surrounding city, as you can see here in the image. Many of these data sets can be overlaid on the 3D mesh base map that you see here, or in 2D maps. Many thanks to our partner Nearmap for providing the 3D mesh for the competition site. It's going to be very useful as you start to explore the site and the surrounding city. And so with that, I'm going to take you through and give you a first introduction to some of the data that will now be made available through the ULI account. And then we can dive into ArcGIS Urban as well. Next slide. Great. So when you go to arcgis.com, you can choose to sign in. And this will be a combination of the username that we will provide out through that email that I was mentioning with the password that you create through that invitation email. Once you sign in, you'll land on the gallery tab. And here you can explore all sorts of data that's been curated for the competition itself, including 3D buildings. We put those in there both as OBJ and Collada, so you can download them. Surrounding business locations like the ones here, If you open up, each layer can basically be downloaded. There are a couple of different options: shapefile, Excel files, or you can just make a 2D map or a 3D map directly in the environment. So for this example, let's choose the 3D option. And so right off the bat, what you'll see is the data that you entered that 3D map from, and you can proceed to model out that map, add layers to the scene. For example, rather than just go with the ground that you see here, we can add the 3D mesh that we were showing a bit earlier. I apologize, the video seems to be paused, if you don't mind. Perfect, thank you. And so when you're searching for data, you can actually search and filter it by the organization. That'll be key if you want to just get the data sets that we've made available as that collection. What you can do is hit the plus button. That adds the mesh to the scene, and you can start to create all sorts of maps that way. Most of the layers will automatically adjust and drape, like you see here with all the surrounding business locations that we pulled from our tool Business Analyst. But on the left panel, if let's, for example, add another set of layers, the site. So in this case, if we add the competition site boundary, you'll get both the focused parcels as well as the entire study area. And we'll click done. And then you can actually use that left panel to rearrange the draw order of the layers by dragging and dropping the layers. You can also delete and remove them that might not be needed. And then each of the layers themselves can be stylized as you see fit. For example, as it relates to these focused parcels, we can remove the white fill color from the parcels. And once you're ready and are happy with how the maps turned out, obviously you can do a lot more than what I just did here in this example, but you're able to then save it. You can obviously print out images of it for your submission, and you can share it with your colleagues that also have a login to the ArcGIS environment. So as soon as I save the scene, that means that I basically have that as something that can be shared. And if I go to my content page as part of my login, you'll actually see that web scene exists there, and it's only shared with me as the default. The default is that it's not shared with anyone else. All right, next slide. So groups are a great way to share data with other team members. We've set up a few groups to make it really easy for you to find the data that's available, either as part of the competition, or a lot of these data sets are ones that Esri has curated that I actually put into these groups so that they're easier to find. Obviously, there's a lot more data out there than just what's existing in these groups. But the Esri curated data sets, we put them into these categories: demographic data, infrastructure data, and then the Esri base maps. The Esri base maps, you can pretty much make your own using the vector tile editor, which we'll cover in the workshop tomorrow. But let's dive into just the first one here, the demographic data. Next slide. So when it comes to demographic data sets, they're updated. They actually have the latest 2020 census integrated into these data sets themselves. The layers are a great way to explore the site and the surrounding city. And keep in mind that all of these layers are nationwide in coverage. So you might need to zoom into Oakland if you open one up. They are mostly, all of them are downloadable to a shapefile. It's going to be a giant data set, obviously, but keep that in mind. You're able to open it up and download it. Next slide. So here's a look at one of those layers. This one, for example, is just showing the average household size throughout the area. And each one obviously will be symbolized a little bit different depending if they're points or polygons. Next slide. So the other group that we have is called infrastructure data. So this contains a lot of points of reference, points of interest that you're going to be able to use in your initial analysis and map creation. Next slide. So a lot of these are also nationwide data sets. So keep in mind, it may require you to zoom into Oakland. But here, what you're going to be able to find are schools, hospital locations, landmarks, transit data. And again, keep in mind, because actually all of this data is nationwide, you'll be able to use it later, after the competition in some real world work. Next slide. So in this example, I opened up the schools And you'll notice that while it's listed as one layer, it comes in as a group of 3 layers, and it represents different types of schools. When in the map viewer, you can actually adjust the labels and symbology as needed to save it as a map like we did earlier with the 3D one, or we can export it as images. We also have a plugin for Adobe Illustrator, if you're familiar with that, which you can actually just bring the map straight in to Photoshop or Illustrator, or you take it out as PDF. Next slide. All right, so now the fun group, in my opinion, we've created this group to provide an easy direct link to ArcGIS Urban, and the specific plan study area in Urban has actually been prepared for the competition. So allow me to show you what that looks like and give you a kind of preview into what to expect. Next slide. All right, so this group, it actually has a link to the plan that we've prepared, so you can go directly to it, and also a link to the webinar demonstration that we did a couple weeks ago. So by clicking on the plan, it'll open up the example, and the first thing you'll want to do is save it as a duplicate. You can do it by clicking on the name. It's right next to the small lock icon. You give it a name. I recommend using your team name, so the rest of your team can be invited to the one plan, and then click OK. It can take around 2 to 3 minutes to make a copy, so be patient. Just keep the browser tab open if you're looking to work on something else while you wait. But once you have made this copy, you own your own copy, and it's ready, and you can now open it. So the first thing we'll want to do is, one member of your team will create this copy, is invite the rest of your team members to it. So what we'll do is we'll go to the configure button, and once we open that up, we go to the sharing tab, and you'll only have to do this once. And what you can do is switch it to users and then start typing in the names of your other team members. So here I'll just add Robin and Kira, who are on my team. And when finished, you click share, and they'll now have access to it. So we'll hit back. Okay, now the first thing you'll probably want to do is send them a link. So bookmark that URL, send them that URL, and then they'll have access to it. Open it up. So we loaded a lot of layers, as you can see, into this example. This also includes the zoning regulations found per parcel. You can turn off and on different layers. You can switch base maps when needed. We have both the mesh and the schematic base map. And so for this example, I'll just use the imagery base map, the mesh itself. So one thing to keep in mind, because when using mesh, it's I would say, a rather new data type. Not all parts of buildings are suppressed whenever you demolish structures on a parcel. You'll just want to be aware of this. It's very easy to fix. The parcel edge doesn't exactly line up with the building edge, so you just draw a small polygon and just make sure that that part is demolished. All right, so now I have a parcel here. It's fully demolished. I can start building up a design. Again, this was very quick. I increased the speed of this a bit as well, but what you'll start to see is how I use the editing tools to actually draw new space use on the parcel. We prepared a handful of example space use types. This includes residential, retail, office, parking, and amenities. You can always create your own, which we recommend. And we'll cover this in the workshop tomorrow, basically creating a new one based on one of these existing ones. It's also covered in the webinar we did a couple of weeks ago. So here we've modeled 2 towers with all the different space use types. And then in the middle, we'll just add a park or plaza, depending on what you want it to be. You can also switch to underground base map. This is going to allow you to draw looking up. It can be a little strange at first drawing this way, but it allows you to add in underground parking, for example. And if any of the spaces clash with each other, you can always adjust the entire building itself, adjust the elevation or the position. So it's important to know that each of these space use types are unique. They have example parameters set up. Make sure you edit these to reflect the local conditions found in Oakland. For example, the average market rate unit might have a higher value in Oakland, the example that we put in there, or different construction costs. And it's important because all of these parameters drive the downstream metrics, which provide a quick look at how the overall scenario that you have open is performing. We provide quite a few metrics, like you can see here out of the box. They can also be customized too. And you can also download these to Excel, which is useful if you have a pro forma being built in Excel and you have some design work, initial design work here in urban, but allows you to download more than one scenario. It's going to be separated as columns. And the export can also be filtered if you have a selection of parcels that you want to download the Excel for, or just see the metrics for a selection. You can do that as well. So as you create scenarios, you can also analyze the impact on shadow or visibility. If anyone's familiar with ArcGIS before this competition, you know that this used to take like days to run. Now we can do it in the web, which is pretty revolutionary. You can check for shadows. You can also look at the visibility. So for example, if there's a unit, whether it's office or residential that has good visibility or bad visibility, you might want to consider that for a higher potential rent or a lower category of rent. So you can create as many scenarios as you need. I recommend that at least first every team member create their own scenario. You can create scenarios based on existing ones, which gives you the ability to try different options, like making, for example, this residential tower that we put here, we could make that instead of just a slab block, we can make it an L shape to block noise from the highway to the park that we drew, and basically make it more of a sheltered area in between. But depending on which scenario that you have active, the dashboard will update and reflect that. So you can really check how changes, even small changes, can improve or might not improve the metrics downstream. So we see this as a really good tool for that early stage. That's why we're talking to you today about this. So the scenarios can be exported, of course. You choose which layers should be included in the export. I'd recommend at least the future buildings and the existing buildings and the metrics. And then you get a link, and that link will go to a web scene, which is a complete copy of what you have in urban. So it's no longer attached, it's no longer live. This you can also find in your contents page of the user that did that export. And each polygon in the scene actually comes across, if you chose to have metrics included, it comes across with the metrics. They're also summarized to the parcel on export, which is really helpful if you want to just take out the raw data at the end of the day. Because it's a web scene, you can also start to style it differently if you want. In this case, I can choose the floor plates that are right now represented by the colors of the space uses, but we can change them up. I'll just pick a random color here, actually just the crosshatch pattern. And you can basically style your scene as much as you want. All of the data underneath, again, I mentioned, is a complete copy when you export it. So what you're able to do is download as a shapefile. You can even take this entire web scene into City Engine. You can take the shapefiles into Rhino. And yeah, so it's really meant to kind of speed up that early stage, initial generation of ideas for the site and the overall study area, the surrounding area. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And also, please take a look at the previous webinar we did a few weeks ago. With that, next slide. All right, so here's a link to the webinar recordings. It's actually the About the 2022 competition page on the ULI website. There's a link to the recording there, but also we have a few workshops coming up tomorrow, which are a great way to get hands-on, especially if this is your first time with any of these tools. The workshops are going to be using the real site of the competition in Oakland, and you can register through the link. We'll also limit each workshop to around 50 attendees, so they'll be open for as long as there are seats left. These will all be recorded, so if you want to go back and watch what was reviewed during that hands-on workshop, or if you want to follow along at your own time, you can do so as well. Next slide. All right, again, as a reminder, maybe you came in late to this webinar, you can expect an email today. This will provide you with a username and a link to create your own password. So it's important to do that. I think it expires after 14 days, and then we have to work with you one-on-one. So when you receive the email, just go ahead and create your password, save it somewhere. Upon completing that step, you're going to be able to log into arcgis.com and access all of the data and the tools shown today. The data will actually be made public as well. I believe it's also going to be available through another downloadable drive hosted by ULI, but you can also access that data publicly as well. We'll make it all public. Everyone will have access to that one Hines Competition ArcGIS account. So make sure you keep your own team's layers separate. So don't share it with the entire organization, or don't share your designs publicly. If you're unsure what that means or have any questions, I definitely recommend watching that webinar that we did that really goes into detail where we weren't able to today. But also feel free to just reach out to us. Next slide. So obviously we're a bit biased. We think the tools in the data itself can really offer a competitive advantage during the weeks ahead, automating a lot of work, especially in the early ideation phase, meaning you have more time to get familiar with the site. And you can start to develop maybe a larger, more holistic strategy for the surrounding study area. We're around all week. We cover a lot of time zones. I'm talking to you live from Rotterdam, and I think Robin is in Boston and Kira is back in California. We'll be happy to jump on a call with you, work via email. But for today, that's where I'll leave it. And many thanks to the ULI team for inviting us, and I'll hand it back to you, Gretchen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brooks. Hey, Brooks, there's a bunch of questions in the chat. I was busy responding to chat questions, so I'm not sure. You may have answered a few of these. The ones about being able to link here if you already own, or if you already have access to ArcGIS Online. There's a question about demolishing and adding trees. Do you want to take a look at those quickly before I move on to the logistics?
Sure. They look like there's a lot of chats in the chat window, but with regard to the account, if you already have an ArcGIS account, you can obviously use it. You can also, I think, find the plan as well, but what you want to do is probably sign up for your ULI account, just become familiar with it through there. And if you want to use your existing account login, you can. It's just we've set it up right now to where if you create the ULI account, you'll have access to that org and the model within the org. So we can probably take it on a one-on-one basis if anyone wants to use their existing account. I think we might just have to add you to a group. But yeah, any other questions? I think a lot of them were probably answered. If you have any other questions about urban, we probably answered in the webinar, or we will tomorrow in the workshop. So if you have questions about really getting hands-on with it, I really encourage you to join the workshop. The question about trees, we just don't yet have trees in urban. It's planned on the product roadmap. But at the moment, what you're doing in there is really doing the initial drafting of space use types on and throughout the competition area.
Okay, great. Russell, the workshop sign-up links are at uli.org/Hines. I've also posted the link to them above. So there's 3 tomorrow with 3 separate registration links. And they're also on the ULI website. And again, we'll be recording everything. We're going to put the recordings at the ULI website as well as in the ULI LinkedIn group. There's in the chat a link to the LinkedIn group as well. So I just want to kind of reiterate, you don't have to use the Esri tools, the ArcGIS tools. However, we just think they're probably a fantastic add-on, and it's part of the reason that we've changed the schedule for this year's competition a little bit. Usually we have about a week after everybody returns from the New Year break to launch the competition. We are launching it in this hybrid fashion, providing you with the information generally about where the competition will be located and some recommended reading and access to the images and some other content ahead of time, in part because we want you to have a chance, if you are not already familiar with ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Urban, to try to get familiar with them so that you're not trying to do that at the same time as you really are digging into the details of the competition challenge. So as it notes here, the full competition challenge brief is going to be released on Monday, January 10. We have a webinar on that day as well. That webinar link, you should register for it, and you can do so at our website. This link that says submit at uli.org/Hines 2022, that is for when you are actually ready to submit your proposal, which is going to be due January 24th. So right now, you're just focused on uli.org/Hines. That's the short URL to all of the information for all of the upcoming webinars. We've posted previous recordings at LinkedIn as well as on our website. So let me give you a few other notes here. Just so you have a little context about this competition, I know Some of the folks on here are not new to the competition. Either it's faculty who have coached teams in the past, or maybe even a few returning participants. But this has been going on here for 20 years. We've had more than 10,000 students participating at over 100 universities in the US, Canada, and beyond. And that includes about 380 students who have made it to the final round. There's more than 1,200 real estate and design professionals, many of them who are ULI members, who have served as advisors to competing teams. If you don't have a professional advisor yet for your team, we really recommend that you get one. There used to be a restriction that you could only have 2 professional advisors. We've released that restriction, so you can have as many professional advisors as you want. For any advisor you have, a faculty or a professional advisor, none of their they should not be producing anything that you submit. They're just to guide and help you understand the parameters of the competition and how you might address the question, but they should not be producing any work. It's really your ideas and your visualizations and work that should be delivered. This year we think about 99 teams registered for the competition, although we are still working with a few teams to ensure that they meet the interdisciplinary requirements and are prepared to compete on January 10. If all 99 teams are ready by then, we've got about 495 students who will be competing this year. So we're excited about that. And while this competition draws students primarily from the US and Canada, it is open to students around the world. This year we have students based in China, the Netherlands, and Egypt who are registered. ULI Hines in Europe also host a version of the competition specifically for students in Europe and the Middle East, North Africa regions. So if you'd like to learn more about that, we can send you information. Again, any questions, please email us, hinescompetition@uli.org. So today we are going to email the first part of the challenge brief to all competing students. So all 495 students who registered and for whom we have email addresses, they will receive an email with the first part of the challenge brief, and it's going to give you that reading list we referenced earlier and a little bit of the site context, but it's not going to have the full list of deliverables and all the specifics about the challenge. That's what you'll receive on January 10. So please sign up for that follow-up webinar on Monday, January 10. And then on the 10th, we'll email the rest of the challenge brief after the webinar, and we will try to share it with all faculty and professional advisors as well. But as team members, you should ensure that your advisors have the brief, because we don't always have every email for every advisor. We will also link to the full challenge brief from the ULI Hines website, uli.org/Hines. In the challenge brief, you're going to find everything you need to know about the competition. We will include a Google Drive folder with resources for all the competitors. We're going to include a link to Flickr, where you can find aerial and ground level video and images of the site. And if you have any questions about accessing any of that, any problems, please email us. Anytime we answer a question during the competition, anytime we answer a question that is relevant to the rest of the competitors, we will post the question and our response in a document in the Google folder. So you should check the document daily. We do not have the staff capacity to email everyone every time we update it. I wish we did, we don't. I recommend you check that document every day. A reminder that during the competition period, you should not call anyone at ULI about the competition. No calling with questions. Please don't email anyone at ULI San Francisco, and you should not contact anyone with the City of Oakland or any of the government agencies or organizations involved in planning or development for the region or the site. You can only contact developers or other people in the private sector who live or work in Oakland to discuss the competition with them if you already have an established relationship with them. No cold calling allowed. If we find out that you have done cold calling, that is grounds for dismissal and the jury would not review your submission. We will have a third webinar, well, a third ULI webinar. There's plenty of webinars when we include all of the ArcGIS webinars, but our primary webinars are this one to announce the city and site, a second one on January 10 to give you the full brief, and a third webinar to announce the finalists and the honorable mentions. That webinar will likely be on Tuesday, February 22nd. I say likely because it may move around a little bit that week, but it's probably going to be that week. And we will email the registration link to that webinar to all the competitors. We'll post it in the LinkedIn group and we'll put it on our website when it's ready. And we will announce the jury members after they select the finalists. So all submissions are anonymous to the jurors when they review them. Please keep that in mind. This year, we do plan to hold the site visit for the finalists in person in Oakland on Friday, March 4th, and the finals event in person in Oakland on Thursday, April 7th. If needed, we can hold these virtually, but we're very hopeful the finals can be in person this year for the first time since 2019. And with that, I will open it up to questions. I see a bunch of them. Hold on, give me a moment to look at the chat. Okay, is there still a restriction that advisors should be in different disciplines? It's not a restriction so much as a recommendation. If we add a professional advisor, do we have to email the competition email address? We would certainly appreciate it if you did. We love knowing who is helping out the students. At this point, it's not required, but we'd really appreciate it. The LinkedIn URL is up above in the chat, but Sarah, maybe you can add it there again. And if you go into LinkedIn and search groups, it's ULI Hines Student Competition. So you can also find it that way, Mark. Let's see. There are a few teams that have not received a confirmation. We are working through that. You hopefully are going to get a confirmation that you're ready to go today, this afternoon, or tomorrow. If you have any questions, email hinescompetition@uli.org. That is the email for every single question you might have. And that's hinescompetition@uli.org. Will you be able to share the ArcGIS workshop? Yeah, those links are at the uli.org/Hines website. And they're also up above in the chat. If you joined late, you might not be able to see them, but they are on our website. Okay. Let's see. If an advisor provides a referral to a professional in the Bay Area, does that qualify as not being a cold call? You're getting into a little bit of a stretch, but I think as long as there is a relationship between the students and or the faculty advisor, that's fine. I think we're just trying to minimize the impact on local professionals being expected to support the student teams, given that there are so many student teams. So just to be mindful of that impact. Okay, I don't see, we have decided it's not an unfair advantage. There's a lot of different ways you can research a site. So we've had this question over and over the years. I have not seen a link between having that relationship and winning or becoming a finalist. Will finalists be notified of their standing prior to the public announcement? We didn't do it last year because we wanted it to be a surprise. We might do it this year. We'd like to be able to pronounce everyone's names accurately when we announce them, or we may reach out just to the faculty and professional advisors for that information. But last year it was a surprise to the finalists on the webinar. We haven't decided how we'll handle it this year, but they'll either find out the week before that announcement or on the webinar. You can register for tomorrow's workshop ASAP. The links are at uli.org/Hines.
Yeah, and Gretchen, actually, we had a flood of registrations, so now they're perfect. Completely full. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, and if you watch the recording, you should be able to follow along. It's meant to be a follow along workshop, and the recording will still act that way. If you have any questions, just reach out to us directly. Again, because our time zone spread is so wide, I think we can basically answer questions at all times of the day. So yeah, and I apologize if you weren't able to join a workshop, but feel free to watch the recording and reach out if you have questions.
Thanks, Max. The webinar, we didn't have a webinar yesterday. We had one in December, and that one is posted on our website. And in the LinkedIn group, I think. If you go to uli.org/Hines, most of the registration links are not on that main page. They are on the About the 2022 competition page, which you'll see on the left side. It's just much easier for us to give you this short URL and for you to remember that. The recording from December 8th has a lot of the same information here, but with a different site. The December one was just a prep to give information about the ArcGIS tools, but we used a different site. The workshops are going to go into a lot more detail. It's open to everyone. The January 6th office hours are open to everyone as a Q&A. Okay. I think the questions are slowing down, but again, just email us at hinescompetition@uli.org. If you have a question that is about the ArcGIS, we'll send it, and that we can't answer, we'll send it on to Brooks and his team. If it's about the competition, we'll be able to answer it. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll get this recording up as soon as we receive it from our webinars team, hopefully later today, might be early tomorrow, but we'll post the slides ASAP. So thank you, good luck. We'll see you again on January 10th for the rest of the launch. Take care, goodbye.